Hello, welcome to Stretty News TV. Crikey, it's been a while, lads. It's probably been a few years, but we just thought, obviously, with the current situation and the lockdown, we thought we'd get the old band back together, as they say. Serge is currently doing some work, apparently, so we'll let him off. But the unholy quartet will be reunited as a foursome at some point in the very near future. But obviously, Jonathan Shrager here with Dale of Stretty News and Ian of Must. And yeah, so we're just here. It's a nice sunny day here in Manchester, and I believe it'll be the same where you are there, Dale.
Yeah.
Just thought we'd have a little chat, really. Why not? Just, talk a bit of United and a bit of Tinder, and you know what it's like. Yeah.
I'm going to jump in. What's the update on Tinder?
Well, it's still an app, I think. I branched out into a bit of Bumble recently, which is now I thought I'd diversify the portfolio. Yeah, you know, obviously during these lockdown times, you need a bit of flirting on the couch.
Social distancing, of course.
Yeah, of course, all virtual flirting, Dale. Just how I like it. It's strange times we're living in, isn't it, lads? It really is.
It is. Ian, how are you coping in quarantine with the little fella?
Yeah, it's not been too bad. I'm doing my bits for Must, either from home or here in the office, as you can see. But yeah, it's not too much. I've got that slight bit of reality of being at work and still having to do work. So that sort of gives you that sort of mind of not being sat at home. But I can imagine, as Jonathan's just alluded to there, you know, he's spending a lot of time social distancing. He's many ways without actually being able to woo the ladies face to face. So yeah. Yeah,
my sources say otherwise.
I don't want to know what your sources are, Dale or Jonathan, for that reason. But yeah, I think
the beauty
pretty
of
much.
You get to see Old Trafford every day still.
I've watched McCall. I've been thinking that the privileged position of where our office is that I literally do get to see Old Trafford still. Of which we most likely have to try and find some video clips. What Old Trafford looks like without me going for a wander around the ground.
Still eroding, I suppose.
Yeah, unfortunately, with the lack of thinking. Although I presume that the progress actually on putting in lifts that they was installing at both ends of the ground for disabled platforms in the quadrants on the south side of the ground will have actually possibly been completed now, although I know that they were still doing it up to the point of behind. Well, they were still in progress and not finished whilst we played the Manchester Derby back in the start of March. So I assume that may be finished now, considering the fact that, you know, construction workers are allowed to go out and continue doing their job. But it's been very sort of quiet and eerie around Old Trafford, so maybe not, without venturing round to the Stretford end.
You've been seeing any? I don't know. Is there any movement at Old Trafford at all? Usually, like you say, that I imagine obviously the megastore will be shut, so you won't see the fans and tourists coming to buy merchandise. But are you still seeing any activity? You always see people wandering around Old Trafford.
There's security.
Yeah, is there anything going on?
There is actually security. I've seen more security than what I would have probably recognised just on a normal day. Obviously, the lack of people around, and like you said, the megastore is shut, Red Cafe is shut, the tours are all shut, so the ground's very quiet in that respect. So I presume that the only sort of people you would pass on either by foot, or you do get the occasional cyclist, there'll be people out doing their sort of daily exercise, apart from the security staff who are at work. But it's really quiet out there.
Is it like the Etihad on a match day?
I was about to say it's alluded to what it would be like passing the Etihad on a match day, even with whatever 50,000 inside the ground. You can pretty much hear a pin drop.
resist.
It's good to see that people get their exercise in, but people cycling past Old Trafford and Johnny on Tinder.
Listen, my fingers are very, very flexible, very strong.
I'd imagine so.
I do a lot of swiping with these fingers.
Yes. Hey, there's been a lot of downtime, and I think people that are there looking to find ways to stay distracted. I've been watching a few old games, and you know, old games, and it's so different. And we were only mentioning before we came on the podcast, and people's footballers' application as opposed to building their image. Back then, it was all about application. Nowadays, you have social media profiles. You have people trying to protect their image in the media, and even interview styles. You know, you look back at managers back then; they were much more ratty. There was much more public spats, even within players on the pitch and stuff. Johnny, like, especially now with downtime, we're seeing lots about players in social media. You know, we're almost living in their sitting rooms. It's changed dramatically. Do you think it's changed for the better, or is there too much kind of profile protecting going on? This does allude to Paul Pogba, by the way, before anyone suggests that I'm talking about someone in particular.
Yeah, no, it's such a nuanced topic, isn't it? The whole social media and footballers, because I mean, you know, it's hard maybe because I grew up in the generation where, well, the internet really didn't exist, never mind social media. So my only exposure to players was through very traditional media channels. And, you know, there was more of an innocence. It was a bit more pure in a way because it wasn't as PR driven, as you said. Nowadays, it's good. I mean, I imagine like the young kids, a lot younger than us, probably love the fact that they can see, you know, that Jesse's cycling on a Tuesday and stuff. And it is great in that regard. It just becomes problematic when the branding supersedes the football, like we kind of alluded to before. We were talking about off camera with the likes of, say, a Paul Pogba and the commercial interests and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, we can get into Pogba as well if you like, but yeah, I think during this lockdown, it's definitely...
Is that your opening line on Tinder?
What, we can talk about Pogba in a while?
We can get into Pogba if you like.
Yeah. Very good.
I thought they were just line on Grinder.
I mean, other dating apps are available. But in all seriousness, you know, I suppose the way we can relate, I mean, the big talking point nowadays is Pogba.
Yeah.
And it's great that the younger kids get to at least have a bit of an insight into what the players are getting up to. And I think, you know, I don't know what you've been following online, obviously, but have you been enjoying United's content? I think they've been doing some decent content trying to get the players involved and little clips and things. I suppose they're at least trying to keep us up to date.
Yeah, look, I've complained about the content shared on the official Twitter feed and social media for a long time, but I kind of starting to appreciate it more now because when I go online and I'm looking for United stuff, some of the videos, the gigs ones they're sharing and stuff, they're nice flashbacks. So no, I have been enjoying that, but I think the podcast too, they just released one with Paul Pogba, and obviously again, when I sit down and when I listen to this, I'm thinking straight away this is a PR thing, and he's going to get the comments out that he wants. He's going to be asked the questions he likes, as will be the case if Stretty News got an interview with a United player, we'd probably be told beforehand you can't ask questions like this, and that's bollocks. That's not free press. People want honest answers, but yeah, you know that when you're listening to podcasts from the club, that it's a PR stunt, and it always will be PR driven. So that's why I kind of enjoy doing, say, podcasts like this or listening to podcasts. That We Stand do a fantastic podcast, and you can tell those people know one another. It's not structured in any old way. It's just a bunch of lads talking football and giving their insight on it. Ian, what have you been listening to any podcasts during this lockdown, or do you listen to any particular United podcasts?
I did pick up on the United We Stand one because obviously it was quite good to get sort of genuine sort of, I quite relate quite heavily to the sort of fanzine lads, the lads that go home and away. And so that's quite a good post-match to see those, and obviously Andy's views on the games. The one that I picked up on is Talk of the Devil, which obviously Andy Mitten again sits on, and that again is quite good.
Athletic, isn't it? From the Athletic.
Yeah, from the Athletic. So again, it's sort of that quality of.
They've done a couple of, like, obviously at the moment when they're having to innovate for content as well. They did like a debate on Scholesy and whether he could be deemed a success for England, didn't they? Which was quite interesting. I mean, we're all kind of scrambling for content to fill our days, aren't we?
Yeah, well, you say debates like that are always good because it's a step into the unknown. It's the same way we could sit down and discuss the potential future of what would have been with Duncan Edwards had he not done what player he would have become, because he was so young. So it's one of those debates, like what would he have went on to? How far would England have went in international tournaments had they stopped their obsession with playing two players that just didn't match in Gerrard and Lampard, and open up the horizon to a fantastic footballer and Paul Scholes. So debates like that are one way to fill the gap with content. And I think that's what we're kind of doing now. We're just having a chat. We have no structure here. We're just blabbing away for half an hour to an hour,
Yeah, we're just freestyling, which is the best way, really. I mean, we'll get into a few more specific United topics and current ones as best we can, but yeah, they'd be like you mentioned there, you alluded to the United We Stand, Talk of the Devil. I'm trying to think which other United ones, the official United one. What was the Pogba podcast like then? Have you actually listened to it yet? Because I was a bit like you, Dale. I was a bit sort of thinking, are they actually going to delve into anything of interest here, or is it going to be all PR friendly?
The snippet that the official feed shared out on Facebook and on Twitter, it gets into the big kind of quote nearly on Graham Souness and the media critics on Pogba, which I thought was interesting, and they were going to get a lot of reactions from that engagements. Yeah, look, if you look at it deeper, I don't know what Souness's obsession was with Pogba from the very start, but at the start I was thinking, right, he's gone over the top the whole time. Now when I listen to him, a lot of stuff I kind of agree with. The attitude thing, maybe I agree with, because I don't see a player there that's putting in the application that his profile desires. So he's not completely wrong. He's not batshit mental. Some of the things he says does register, and rather than coming out and hitting back at critics with a podcast, I'd much rather see let us keep talking and come back into a Man United shirt and be one of the best midfielders in the world that he can be.
100% agree. Yeah, it's yeah. I would have been interested as well. Did they mention Mino Raiola at all?
No, that's I'm sure when I say that he was given the questions that he liked, I'm sure Raiola also had an input in that as well.
Wow, because that would have been very interesting. Because I think we've all been desperate to ask Pogba is why let your agent represent you and speak on your behalf in such a negative manner towards the club. That is basically the crux of it, isn't it? I think that's probably what's offended most Reds more than anything.
Yeah, that's what annoys me, because during the time in which Raiola came out attacking Solskjaer was a time when things weren't going too well for Solskjaer and it was easy to hit him. And I think even at the time I was thinking, this does not help anyone.
No, it's kicking him when he's down, wasn't it?
Kicking him when he's down. And I think that's the lack of respect. And it also stems from Pogba, because he's allowing it to happen. He's not coming out explaining that this shouldn't be happening. And that brings up the debate too. Like, do people want Pogba at Manchester United next season? Because we've been kind of looking at stories the past 2 years about potential moves to Juventus and Real Madrid. He hasn't played much this season. He's caused more trouble with his agent than he's done any good for us this year in particular. Ian, do you want him in Man United shirt next year?
Well, like you've just sort of mentioned, is the sort of 2 year period where we've had there's transfer sort of rumours. There's obviously the bits you've just mentioned with Raiola coming out and being negative towards the manager and things like that that I don't think have helped anybody really sort of be that sort of have that attachment with Pogba as what you would expect, from a player of that ilk. I actually wouldn't mind to see him next season. I was quite looking forward to seeing how it sort of played out on the fact that he was supposed to be coming back from injury. And like you say, I think unless this is just sort of way that Pogba wants to sort of, because I've not seen that podcast either, in what he wants to say is, right, well, I'll do my talking on the pitch. And by that, you would then expect, the sort of quality of performance that you would expect of somebody who's won a World Cup. And he would go into that side that, since we've had Fernandes and he's done superb and we've looked to take a couple of steps forward, you would want for him to come back and have the role where he comes in and goes, you know what? These are doing really well. I need to take them up another level by putting in my application, putting in my performances. And that's the sort of thing that you'd want to see from a player, like Pogba. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. It's the sort of negativity that we've got that you would, and I think Rio sort of touched on this when he did his BT Sports pundit, in that he wants Pogba to come out and say, look, right, this is the end of the line. This is what's going on. And I'm making, I'm committing to the club, or this is what's going to happen. And it shuts those rumours down. It shuts everything else down. And we get to just concentrate on the Pogba. Now, obviously, with the situation we're in where the football stopped, and we don't know where the rest of the season is, if it's going to restart, if we're going to see things behind a closed door, if we're not going to see that, if the season's going to be null and void, sorry to the Scousers, or anything like that, then I think we're really going to sort of struggle to sort of place him until we get back to playing some sort of football and see if he comes back. The other sort of positive that comes with that is that realistically, he should not now be able. There shouldn't be any sort of hiding in any situation in the fact that he should be given a bit of pre-season sort of training, if you will, as the rest of the squad will need before they start matches. He should be led literally straight back into being able to be that fit to play those games. There shouldn't be an issue in him not being able to play, as we've seen with like the sort of, he was supposed to be coming back, and then just after Christmas he came back, played 2 games and was injured, and then Solskjaer said he was out for a month, and then 7 weeks later we'd still not seen him and all this. And at that point, Bruno would, and the results had started to change. That you started to forget about Pogba, and a lot of people will actually question that bit. Will actually say, Pogba, get back into this team, and that was where we sort of left it.
The one thing I think people have overlooked, and it's a trend all season with a number of players, Solskjaer hasn't been very, he hasn't been helpful with giving press comments when it comes to player return dates. And I do feel that a lot of the uncertainty around Pogba wasn't helped by that. And I think that also comes from Pogba, because did Solskjaer know himself when Pogba was due to return? He always keeps his cards close to his chest on any of the players that got injured. The only kind of one that he had to speak out about was Rashford, because people said were reporting that it was a really serious injury. But a number of the players that got injured this season, we didn't know when they were going to return. McTominay was one of them. So that maybe added some criticism that Pogba gets, because it was such uncertainty around, 1, his return date, and 2, whether he's going to be at Man United for long.
The other thing as well you had to factor in was that the noises coming out of Old Trafford was, or certainly from those people that are supposedly in the know, is that you had Pogba's own medical team advising him. So apparently it actually contradicted the medical advice from Old Trafford. So essentially he had his own doctor that recommended this surgery, essentially so that he could be back for France. And there were just so many elements, because if you look at Paul, the fact that he's never spoken out against his agent criticising United, the fact that a lot of things seem to point towards that he would prioritise a move away and also playing for France over United. And it's just that there's so many things that don't reflect favourably on him. So, for example, it would appear now that he might even want to stay and play because Bruno's arrived, and in stark contrast to Pogba, he's a player that's got bags of ability but also applies himself amazingly when he's on the pitch. And you've seen the impact he's had. He's sort of had the impact that we want Paul to have as well. And I think that doesn't look favourable. That it's almost like, oh well, now that it's smelling of roses again, I want to come back in and play. We've only ever wanted Paul to give his all. Like, that's what makes you laugh when people will accuse you of certain things on Twitter for questioning Pogba. I don't give a shit if Pogba, has urine on his hair. I don't care if Pogba takes a run up from Birmingham to Manchester to take a penalty.
Are we reading through some of your Tinder scripts right now?
Yeah, I'm not. This isn't an insight into my bedroom. I'm just saying. I'm trying to highlight the point that anything Pogba does external to football, I couldn't give two shits. I just want to see Pogba playing for the shirt. That's all any of us have ever wanted. And so would I want? It's almost like a lover scorned, isn't it? It's like with Paul. I've sort of fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. That kind of thing. With Pogba, I feel like he's hurt me so many times. Can I truly forgive him again? Do I want to forgive him? Do I want him to play for United? Can I love him? Maybe if I see 6 months of consecutive application and the thought of him with Bruno. I mean, you guys probably think about it more tactically as well. I don't know if that can work. It probably can. You've just got two class players, and I'm sure they could form part of an amazing United team going forward.
The only thing I'd say about that is Bruno looks a lot more disciplined positionally. So I think that if he played a more deeper role to let Pogba forward, that might not be good for Bruno because he provides goals and assists and you want him up the pitch. But I'm saying maybe this could be the player that allows Pogba to take that role rather than... I do think it's unfair to his players as kind of a not a defensive midfielder, but he's played so deep for a player that takes out key passes, in the final third. He's got a great passing range, but I want to see Pogba behind the front man.
But see, I mean, thinking about it tactically, I know people will, until Solskjaer proves otherwise, maybe, people will always claim he's a little bit of a, I'm just making this phrase up, a culture merchant because he gets United and things like that. But tactically, I mean, he's kind of proven in big games that he has got a little bit of tactical wherewithal. But the thing is, City can make several world-class players fit. So surely we can, if Pogba is committed, he wants to stay, surely we can make those two work in some system.
The one thing I will say on that from the podcast, and Pogba's tactical nous, he claims that he watches football, he does not listen to it because he knows football. He doesn't need to listen to other people talk about it. And that's bullshit, because I know people that know football and that sit down and enjoy other opinions, and it makes them think differently.
What he said?
He said that he doesn't listen to other people what they say about football because he knows enough about it already.
That's problematic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's popular. Exactly, and I can guarantee you.
Is that not just a dig at journalists?
Possibly, but what I'm saying is, if Guardiola and Sir Alex Ferguson bump into one another, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking these two great football minds. I might take something from his book. He might take something from mine. And that's like, what's he on? He doesn't listen to no one about football.
I mean, he should be listening to this first and foremost.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, I'm sure sort of going back to his personality as well, I'm sure he's a good lad. He always comes across well, certainly in interviews and stuff. But I don't care. I'd almost rather him be a dick in interviews and be like Roy Keane on the pitch. I don't really care. it's great that he's this late. I mean, using the French term here, laissez-faire, you know, being culturally in keeping the fact that he's French. But yeah, he's this laissez-faire, joie de vivre character. That's great, but we want to see the other side of him. And I really hope that if he is to come back, that it can work with Bruno. It will. I believe it can. I think it will.
Look, we're talking about two quality players here. Like we're complaining a bit about Pogba, but Pogba's a world-class player. On his day, there's very few midfielders that can do what he can do with a football. What we're all complaining about, we haven't seen enough of that, and that may be behind the player's drive. And hopefully with Fernandes, it's like, well, I want to be part of that. I think that he could get better out of me than, say, Andres Pereira, who Pogba's played a lot with, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean, and then you can add Harry Kane in for 200 million.
Yes. Now, which football club is going to pay 200 million to Spurs for Harry Kane when, with this whole COVID-19, which will follow with a financial crisis, there's very few players they're going to go for that amount. If anything, player values are going to drop. And Daniel Levy thinks 200 million for Harry Kane.
We obviously think he must think he's worth 300 million then in the.
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy. And Ian, we need a centre forward. We need goals. So that's why we got Harry Kane, Igalo in January on loan to replace Rashford with the injury. But would you be going all out spending big on a centre forward, or would you prioritise maybe a right wing centre midfielder or even a centre back?
I think the way that it looks as though Ollie's sort of building his team, you know, that he's probably quite happy with the fact that he's got Martial. I've been really impressed by, as many will have been, with Igalo, because he's the sort of chalk and cheese opposite of what Martial gives you, which a lot of United fans have died out for that type of player. So it'll be quite interesting to see what happens with him, and the fact that this short-term deal that's supposed to last till June, you know, there was talk of, because of the fact he's hit the ground running and everybody's got excited by him, that he would actually possibly earn himself a contract for New Year, for the next season, New Year. It could be the bloody New Year by the time we find this football back. But yeah, I think that might be what we get to, is if he goes into next season with a contract, then you sort of blow the idea of needing a centre forward out of the water. Then your concentration, as it sounds by what we've seen from pretty much sort of daily or a couple of days down the line, is these talks of Sancho, and that's sort of where United look like they're spending that sort of big money. Now, I think that sort of complements what Ollie would be doing. Would be, you know, he's got that pace in Rashford on the left-hand side. He needs to replicate that with somebody of similar sort of quality in Sancho on the other side. That, and possibly a centre-back for me, if Pogba stays, then I can't see any more beyond looking at priorities in those two positions, especially considering the fact we now don't have a clue where a transfer window would fit in between the seasons, in that sort of sense.
Does that Johnny, does that make it feel very unsettling to be talking about transfers right now? Because as we know, with COVID-19, people are dying all around us. We don't really know it's going to be a transfer window, but we're still seeing these headlines of ridiculous fees for footballers.
That is just, I mean, even more so now than ever. It's just filling space, isn't it? Filling column inches and online content. But particularly, I mean, the Harry Kane one, there's so many points that kind of sprout from Harry Kane for 2 million. Firstly, it's problematic because he's proven to be very injury prone. 200 million on a player, even if they're world class, is a gamble at the best of times. To do it on a player that's been injured, had long periods of injury in the last few years, seems like a massive risk. It strikes me as a typical Ed Woodward signing of, say, the first 3 or 4 years post Fergie, because he's an English traditional centre forward who'll probably sell a shed load of shirts if he proves successful and scores goals. So for me, I can't get away from the fact that that seems like a commercially driven signing, because if it works, he could be a real success in terms of the merchandise. But it also, if you think about Harry Kane and stylistically how he would fit in terms of how we played, if you remember, there was always that debate even at Spurs. Do Spurs play better without Harry Kane? Do Spurs play better when it's Dele Alli, Son and Moura as the front three, that because they're more fluid and they can play? Like, from everything we've seen from Solskjaer, that's what he's trying to create at United, sort of a very fluid front three that are all mobile, all very fast. Surely Harry Kane, in some regards, is the opposite of that. So it doesn't kind of seem to be in keeping with what he's trying to do. I know we've had Igalo to kind of create, give us a little bit of versatility, but I don't know. There's no way we're going to spend 200. If we do buy him, it's going to be nowhere near that figure. I know that much. But I don't know what you think about any of the points I've just made. But to me, it just doesn't seem to make sense on a few levels.
No. I think the one you made, the point you made about Spurs maybe looking better without Harry Kane. If I had to pick, I was thinking about it. If United needed a player on the left side, and it was Harry Kane or Son, I'd be buying Son all day long.
100%. And that's not to say that I'm not one of these people, like it's kind of popular to be sort of counterculture, isn't it? And say, oh, Harry Kane's rubbish and stuff. He's not. He's a great centre forward on his day. I mean, when he's
one of the best in the world.
Yeah, he's brilliant. But you've got to factor in the price. You've got to factor in the injury history. And you've got to factor in that United, we've been a club, certainly in recent years, that have had to budget our spending. So you don't want to go and blow essentially your whole budget on one player. Like you say, I'd rather focus on 2 or 3 areas and make sure that they're covered.
You need to remember too that we got Robin van Persie at a cut price deal and had at 25 million, and had he been going for a top fee, Ferguson only went to sign him because he was available. His contract was running out and he could get him that bit cheaper. He probably wouldn't have got him otherwise.
No, you're right. But then, Levy has always managed to get the best price from us for any of the players we've got in recent years, hasn't he? He's always got like the premium price for your Berbatovs and your Carricks. But I mean, 200 million is beyond, I think, what anyone would value Harry Kane at, even in in a standard market.
Yeah, it's typical. It's a matter of a club taking the piss, and I see the same thing again with Leicester. I've seen reported that United have apparently ended their interest in Maddison because Leicester want over 100 million for him. And if you remember back to last summer, they got a world record fee for Harry Maguire, which I'm not complaining about. Initially, I was kind of uncertain about him, but after Christmas, he started showing his performances as well as his leadership off the pitch that I think he's going to go down as a really, really good buy for the club.
100%. And I think with the transfers as well, what we've got to remember is we've been operating from a position of relative lack of power, certainly in comparison to recent decades when players have been desperate to come to United. Obviously, in recent years, that hasn't been the case, and therefore the balance of power has been in the agents or the clubs or the players' favour. But now, if Solskjaer can kind of get us back on the right track and go in, positive momentum, you're going to start seeing players want to come to us again, and that's when the balance of power can be hopefully resumed in our favour, because then you've got players that will kick up a fuss if they're not sold. So you might get a Maddison who says, well, you've kiboshed my move, you've kind of you've quashed my move to United because you're asking for an exorbitant fee. So maybe I just, like kind of what happened with Zaha, I suppose, at Crystal Palace. He's I wouldn't say he's down tools. He hasn't, because he still played, but you can clearly see he wanted to go to Arsenal, and they priced him out
of potentially the move of his career, because he did come to United. It didn't work out for him. He didn't get many chances. This was his career move.
Exactly. So we've got to we've got to kind of hope that our form dictates prices moving forward rather than clubs knowing that we're desperate.
Yeah, I know the image of the club, I think, in the past year, I think we had our difficult time, I think, suppose, during the season, a lack of consistency. But just before the season was suspended, United were on a great run of 11 games unbeaten. And with Bruno's introduction, the fact that the two players that came in January hit the ground running, there was a lovely atmosphere around the club again. And even you could see it. We talked about the social media feeds. They were posting nearly daily updates from Bruno Fernandes and Igalo smiling at training. It was a nice feel about the club. And I think that will appeal to potential transfer targets when they see something is bubbling at Manchester United again. And just a bit of credit too for Solskjaer, because when things weren't going his way, he never changed his way of doing things. He stuck by what he said he was going to do when he came in and getting the right players there. Look at the players we lost last summer. There's an average age, and I think it's in the 30s. That's clear to what he's doing. And that like, as you see with other top teams at the moment, and Liverpool is a good example because he actually uses Klopp as a reference in a lot of interviews. That didn't happen overnight. In their first season under Klopp, when they started playing a more pressing game, their players suffered a lot of injuries and times out. The players have to adjust themselves to the style of football they're being asked to play. That's a huge problem at United because we had David Moyes, Van Gaal, Mourinho, and now Solskjaer. They're all four different management, different ideologies of the game. So that's tough for the squad too, to have to readjust time and time again. And right now, I'm happy with what I'm seeing.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're right. It's easy. It's very easy to criticise Solskjaer, but I think he's been... I know that some fans would say that it grates on him a little, that he's sometimes maybe overly optimistic. Sometimes you want to hear a bit more realism. But, he can't do right for doing wrong, because Mourinho was criticised for being exactly that, too realistic. And maybe opening, what do they call it, the phrase, but shall we say, exposing too much about the daily activity at United, whereas Solskjaer's doing everything to preserve the integrity of the club. And he's been nothing but class, hasn't he, throughout, really? I mean, you can't say he's ever let us down in that regard. He's been brilliant. What do you reckon, Ian? Are we all in?
Yeah.
We're all in, aren't we?
Are we all in?
I think you've got to give him his credit. Like Dale said, that he's had to sort of rough the sort of bad times out and keep to what he thinks is the right thing. And like you say, it's hard to go back to comparing it with what Klopp did at the start with Liverpool, but that injury, and we got that straight away after Mourinho. That initial boost of morale when he first came in as caretaker manager died its death, and then right at the end of the season we found we'd looked like we'd completely worn out. But that was the players adjusting, and times at the moment, we've had it at times this season where obviously the injuries have stacked up against us, but that'll only come to fruition in the possibly next season, and maybe the end of this season, actual facts, because we'll have possibly near to fully fit squad if we come back and actually resume this season. And I think all these...
As will everyone else, won't they? Which is a good thing, because, people will say, "Oh, yeah, but everyone else will have a fully fit squad." But I'm happy with that, because we've got to back our fully fit squad against other fully fit squads, if you see what I mean. And I would actually say that, relatively speaking, if we miss big players, it will impact us more. But Solskjaer, in his credit as well, to his credit, he's never moaned, has he? He's never kind of drawn upon that as a real excuse, which obviously a lot of people would accuse Mourinho of. And
well, Mourinho did it already this season with Spurs. I remember the young Irish striker at Spurs. I can't think of his name right now, but he Son and Kane were injured.
Yeah.
And he gave an interview and he goes, "How can I do this?" Or something along the lines of, "I have no striker available." That young lad is even on the bench. You have to make do with what you have. Common sense, but Mourinho is too worried about his again public profile rather than you know, it's all about this, because he's thinking if I fail here so bad, I'm bringing them down with me. I'm not going to tarnish my CV. And again, Solskjaer, when players have been injured, hasn't been afraid to call in players from the youth team. And again, credit for spotting that Brandon Williams was about to emerge. He's been absolutely brilliant with Mason Greenwood. In fact, some people have complained that they wanted to see more Greenwood at times this season, that he should have been getting. Solskjaer is being very careful not to burn out that young lad. He wants to make sure that when he's ready to play, he is ready to score goals.
100%. You've got to, I think a lot of the maybe the kids, especially like the vocal majority on things like Twitter and what have you, they probably didn't grow up around the era where Fergie did have to nurture and blood the younger members of the class of 92. So they probably don't see the kind of parallels there. But 100%, you're spot on. He's been brilliant with Mason. And I've been guilty of it myself. Oh, I want to see more of him and stuff. That's natural as fans. We get giddy. But he sees him on the training ground. He sees when his energy levels are right, when he's when he's up for it. And he's done there's a lot that he's done right, Solskjaer. And you hit a really good point that we were just getting that. It's just sod's law, isn't it? That we were just sort of hitting that little bit of form, and that kind of camaraderie was quite evident within the squad. And then obviously the sad reality of the world at the moment. But we've just got to hope that we can kind of regain that immediately when we come back. Which I don't know. What's your thoughts on when it does resume? What happens? Do we resume the league? Does it have to be finished to preserve the integrity, as some people have said? I mean, I can just say from my opinion, very easy for us to take the piss out of Liverpool, of course. But I've got to say, they've been waiting 30 years, haven't they? We've been waiting, I mean, it'll only be like 7 years for us, but I can tell you now, if this was us that were 2 games away, even after 7 years, we'd all be spitting feathers, wouldn't we? We'd be so unimpressed. So you can only imagine how they feel after 30 years. I've got to say, even as they're staunch rivals, you've got to give it Liverpool. You've got to let them win it somehow. I don't know how you resume the league, finish it, whatever. You've got to. You're about to say no chance, aren't you, Dale? I can see it in your face. No mercy.
The thing with Liverpool is they probably shouldn't have went on that mid-season break, and they probably would have got 2 games in during that spell. They probably could have. They agreed to go. But look, by all means, hand it to them with a big asterisk. You have to win the league.
Yeah, but wouldn't you? Oh, I don't know.
I want the league to resume because Manchester United have so much to play for. We have top 4 play for, and I believe a very important point that with all the squads back fit, I couldn't give a fuck about and the other squads. But Manchester United has such a good squad of players to come back. We were absolutely amazing before suspension, and we hadn't even got our probably best performing player this season, 2 of them in McTominay and Rashford. So how good will we be with Fernandes, Pogba? By all means, bring it back and let us fight for top 4, as well as the Europa League, which we've won for in the quarter-final, and the FA Cup to fight for as well. So we've too much pride to let down by the season not carrying on, and Liverpool will win the league if that does happen. But yeah, I am enjoying this period of kind of not knowing what's going to happen. So we're sending our little memes on Twitter about the league ending, and they're getting plenty of engagement from over Merseyside, let me tell you.
They are. And actually, I will say to their credit, they're not. I mean, they do realise, obviously, that the health is paramount and that what's going on is more important. So you're not seeing them sort of openly criticise and moan too much.
No, they know it's a joke. They know it's only... It's a gesture, because look, turn the tables, they'd be laughing at United's prospect to win the title, and that's football. Because some people might sit back and have the moral high ground that we wouldn't do that if the tables to turn. It's football. Yes, you would.
Oh, of course they would, absolutely. But yeah, I do, deep down somewhere in me, I do have some sympathy for them, I must say.
Ian, what should we do with the rest of the season? What's the plan you go with?
Well, I'm quite, and I've always have been quite happy to resume on the fact that United have still got top four to go after, because that's what the be all and end all should be. What United are doing, not what everyone else is doing, despite the fact that we've had a poor season by some stretches. But by the end of, if you could play out the rest of the season and United have got that chance at the top four, then you'd actually give it some sort of success in that sort of sense. And I think that's what I'd like to see. How you do it, the whole thing behind closed doors for me doesn't sit right. That whole last game that was played behind closed doors, I know it was your Europa League tie, but it was an eerie atmosphere with they had what was it, a select number of fans in the ground.
Let me throw you a question Ian, about that. That felt very, very weird. What feels more weird is no football at all right now. And I know I totally sided with your side of the argument when that game was played, and I was like, oh, this is bollocks, bollocks, bollocks. But I think now, if we can get a bit of football back, I think people would jump at it.
Yeah, I can sort of understand that, and I think a lot of people would for that. But it's the sort of, for me, this talk about like games being played at neutral grounds. A couple of weeks ago, there was chancing of like having teams like in hotels, and it was almost like a World Cup feel, and they play at neutral grounds, potentially in the Midlands. Now there's been articles in the past couple of days of games being played at Wembley, and for me, there's no home away advantage in that sort of perspective, and it takes that. And I know you've got the whole sort of eeriness of having an empty stadium to start with. Doesn't matter where you play it, but to me, if you're sat in the home dressing room at Old Trafford, knowing that your opponents next door have got a slightly smaller changing room, you've got all your luxury and you're blasting out your tunes or whatever, it can make an effect. It has that sort of effect.
That's a real Ferguson perspective. Who is that Fergie in disguise?
But that for me is where you get sort of a home advantage and a bit of an edge, and I think that maybe is what you lose by putting it in neutral venues, because then, for instance, if you played it at Wembley where the dressing rooms are pretty much the same size,
we'll just make smaller dressing rooms for the away team.
Just close it out.
Yeah, just only cold water showers in the dressing room, and then on the loudspeakers in the stadium itself, you could have like cheers when the home team are on the ball and boos when the away team are on the ball.
Or just play this podcast on the PA system.
Yeah.
Literally just change it up so it sounds like FIFA. Just playing crowd noises as well over the top. I can understand the frustration with football, but if you're not going to be able to play it with some sort of advantage to one team over another, and possibly it being done within an environment that includes a crowd, because I can't. No, as much as I'm literally yards away from Old Trafford, and I'm as eager as any beaver to get back in there, especially after that McTominay goal against City.
You're always down on the concourse at the bar anyway. What are you talking about? You watching the game.
I tell you what, I spend very little time as much now that I'm sort of in TRA and we sing, and there's an atmosphere, and it sounds a bit mental, but yeah, that McTominay goal was just something, and the scenes in there for about 15 minutes after the game was unbelievable. You don't replicate that without actually being in sort of, unfortunately, without being able to replicate it round the ground. But that sort of thing means that you spend less time at the bar.
No, you're right, but I do agree with Dale. I mean, on a scale of things, football without a crowd is better than no football, isn't it? I suppose the only thing that concerns me is moving forward, if they try and kind of cram in the season and then start a new season, because I don't want to. I feel that we flog players at the best of times, in terms of the intensity of the schedule. And that only, if that increases injuries, it decreases performance levels. As far as I'm concerned, there's too much football anyway. So if they're going to try and cram in a league, then start a new league 2 weeks later, to me, that's problematic.
Maybe Guardiola get his wish then. I think it was him that said it, that they might cancel the League Cup, get rid of it.
Yeah, 100%. Whatever needs to be done.
There is a debate before this that footballers have too many games.
Yeah.
They're being run out. And if they do try and cram, even if they cram the end of this season, that will have an effect on players going into the next season and beyond. They might have to cut something. This could be the death of the League Cup.
They've got to. They've got to, they've got to put players, they've got to think of the players a little bit as well. Can't just flog them completely.
Rather believe that they're paid an abnormal amount of money, so they should be worked, or they should be, able to do more, which is complete rubbish. You have to think of these people as human beings too.
Of course they are, and there's only so much your body can take, and it's ridiculous, really. And it also, for the fans, the more football, it kind of decreases the quality because they're knackered, aren't they? Or they're playing with injuries and stuff. So, yeah, just as long as they do it in a sensible way. But I can't get away from the fact that even as a United fan, I would feel something for Liverpool if they can't win this title. I would. Hard for me to say, but deep down, I think I would. Yeah, there you go. I've said it. It's on record now.
We have a few questions to wrap up on from Twitter. We've two ones I picked out.
Yeah.
The first one from Brian Murphy. Schmeichel.
The PG.
Oh yeah, I made sure. Schmeichel, Van der Sar, De Gea in that order. Agree? Ian. Schmeichel, Van der Sar second, De Gea third.
Yeah.
For me, it's probably about the right sort of thing, but I think mainly, that could possibly be just based on the fact that we know what Schmeichel won, we know what Van der Sar won, and De Gea's not been in those sort of teams that were pretty much at the top of the league and challenging most seasons. So, and when he was, it was in his early days, and he's grown a lot and stuff like that, and De Gea become, can save and do the shot stopping that I think would actually be higher than both of them.
I think the big
so I think it's a really sort of hard one to judge, but I always liked Schmeichel as a player, as a commanding keeper, and that's something that De Gea has not got. Van der Sar was sort of similar as well.
Yeah, it's the all-round nature of it. If you're talking about pure shot stopping, De Gea might be better than them all, but it's the all-round goalkeeping package that I mean.
Schmeichel used to launch throws.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the fact that he could assist goals with his, like you say, with his long throws and the way he used to his one-on-ones, he'd kind of cover the whole goal with his body, the way he spreaded himself, and I don't know. For me, he's the best keeper I've ever seen, without doubt. I mean, Buffon doesn't compare. Neuer is probably as close that I can remember seeing, but for me, he's the best ever.
We all agree on Schmeichel being first then, but do we all agree that Van der Sar pips De Gea?
Again, based on the all-round element, just because he had more of a presence. I mean, he didn't have the same presence as Schmeichel, but he had that, just physically, he had more of a presence. But yeah, I suppose Ian's point's a good one. We've never seen De Gea in a great side, so it's very hard to say. Yeah. Kind of behind the eight ball, isn't he, immediately? Not a bad problem to have that we've had all three of them.
Absolutely, and especially after so many years trying to replace Schmeichel, where we had a couple of duds. There is another question there from Ben Parsons. How realistic is it that United can sign their top targets, Sancho, Grealish, this summer, given the uncertainty?
Well, just in terms of the signings, I think they're realistic in terms of being able to get them. I think the players probably will be keen on coming, which kind of ties in nicely with what we were discussing before, the fact that, there was that little bit of a team spirit that was getting cultivated. And I think, like you said, Dale, other players see that. It's online, it's there, it's very visible. And I think those young English players will buy into that. But in terms of the economics and the societal factor of it, and whether there's going to be a transfer window, your guess is as good as mine in that regard.
Yeah, it throws a lot up into the air. Like Ian, it gives clubs maybe a chance to, Skype agents, WhatsApp agents. So there's more time to do things like that and negotiate. But are clubs able to negotiate when there's so much uncertainty?
That's sort you pretty much answer your own question at the end there, really. I sort of would think that, with all this time that people are sat around or working from home in that sort of situation for agents and players and stuff, is that, yeah, you've got the time to do these types of deals behind the scenes. But, there's got to be something where you've got to think, well, hang on it, how does this work when we get to a transfers? We've talked and debated about how you finish the season off, or if you don't in that instance. And the point that I think that needed to go on as well is that start next season and give next season a full run out. You pretty much starting next season in what is the second weekend of August. Now you've got a fiction and a transfer window before that as well. And obviously, like we've all said, is that you can't throw in players from literally having one season end and then 2 weeks later start a new one. It's not going to work. So I think that's part of the question is you're having that sort of gap between the seasons. Then is 2 weeks quick enough to be able to suggest that a transfer window is able to be open and all these transfers gives clubs enough time to do the sort of dealings, even if they have sat down on Skype or Zoom or whatever and done the sort of negotiating beforehand.
Now, we got cut off for a few moments. Johnny's battery went dead.
Yeah, it wasn't my Tinder date arriving at the door.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the social distancing,
So
I'm a very
driveway.
Well, I'm a very responsible Tinder user, so it's all virtual at the moment.
Right, we were just finishing up. Ian, you were talking about the league coming back and just the uncertainty of transfers and so on. Like we are in this puddle of unknowns. So when we do next week's or the weeks after podcast, I kind of want to step away from transfers, step away from talking transfers, because it's just nobody knows. No one has a clue anymore. Even the people that do know what's happening and here gets snippets of information, I don't believe are getting any information at the minute, because what's happening?
Yeah, it's speculative at the best of times, isn't it? But at the moment, it's just you add that extra layer of kind of uncertainty, and it becomes pointless, doesn't it?
Yeah, no, it does. And to be honest, look, there's a lot of things to be discussing, and we're sure we'll get more updates as the weeks go by. But as for now, they were given dates for the end of April and this and that, and it's just no one knows. No one has a clue.
No, but we'll we're gonna aim, aren't we, to maybe film one a week.
Yeah,
with us three, and maybe if Serge is around, obviously in the future. But no, it's just nice. I mean, like you mentioned before, Dale, ultimately it's just us catching up anyway, more than anything, because like most people, you get a bit lazy with keeping in touch with people, and it's nice just to, if nothing else, just for us to have a chat. So if we can film it and talk a bit United, then, and it provides some sort of entertainment for someone, then all the better. But yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice, kind of, as I say, getting the band back together and having a chat.
absolutely. This will call for shouts of an Oasis reunion, maybe.
Yeah, if we can do it.
Yeah,
if we can do it, surely Liam and Noel can, sort themselves out.
Sort of differences there, which I'm sure a lot of it's media play acting.
Yeah.
We'll do that. We'll do one a week, and hopefully Serge will be on the next one. The podcast for this show, the Unholy Quartet. That's what we agreed with, wasn't it?
Yes. Obviously inspired by the Holy Trinity, but with 4 of us and not so holy, maybe. So that's what we were driving at. There's a funny graphic, isn't it, that Serge did as well.
I'm gonna see if I can get up my phone to just to share it off. We'll have to share it again, of course, on the social media platforms. But
yeah, and what about, before we go, obviously, just a quick one in terms of plugging what you're doing. Obviously, Dale, your upload, there's stuff going out on Stretty News every day. And Ian, anything you want to mention about Must during this time?
We're pretty much continuing to do things with the club on the sort of issues that are arising with season ticket renewals and stuff like that. I'm in the office a few days a week so that we can continue to sell stuff that we sell online, which is a great revenue sort of thing to keep us going.
How were the United branded dildos doing? Have you shifted many?
I was going to mention something. We're going right up the arse, but there's some sort of a Wenger issue going on there. Dale's found that image.
There's the Unholy Trinity. Is that, which one's this one? Well, so I'm George Best. It's Ian. Ian's David May.
Ian's David May.
Johnny's Charlton.
Yeah, with the which sort of seems appropriate with my lack of hair.
And Serge's Law.
Yeah. No, wait. Your Law, because you have the because Serge is bestie, isn't he?
No, look there.
Oh yeah, I thought because you had the Law T-shirt, didn't you?
Yeah, that was the initial plan.
Ah, right.
That was the initial plan, and then Serge got creative.
Did he? Right. Yeah. It works. You both got hair, so you can get away with it.
Right, lads. Absolute pleasure speaking again, and we'll have to do this again. Ian, stay safe. Johnny, stay safe. Everyone, stay safe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bye.
Cheers.